So the case I chose for this is the McDonald versus Chicago. Um, I chose this case because I've always been interested in gun laws in America, and going through the cases that we had to choose from, this was the one that appealed to me the most. Um, so in McDonald versus Chicago, it was a landmark decision of the Supreme Court of the United States that determined whether the Second Amendment applies to the individual states. The court held that the right of an individual to keep and bear arms protected by the Second Amendment is incorporated by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment and applies to the states. This decision cleared up the uncertainty left in the wake of the District of Columbia versus Heller and of gun rights in regard to the states. So basically, in America, you can own a firearm, but in Chicago, they made it illegal to own a handgun. And in this case, it was Otis McDonald, who was a resident of Chicago, and his house had been broken into several times. I think it was 5, and he claimed that his neighborhood had been taken over by gangs and drug dealers, and he was a experienced hunter, and all he owned was shotguns. So he felt he needed a handgun to properly defend himself in the next eventual attempted robbery of his home. So he then found out that owning a handgun in Chicago was illegal. So he filed this case and eventually won. But due to Chicago's requirement that all firearms in the city had to be registered, yet refusing all handgun registrations after 1982, when a citywide handgun ban was passed, he was unable to legally own. McDonald was unable to legally own a handgun. As a result, in 2008, he joined 3 other Chicago residents in filing a lawsuit, which became this case. So, initially, the Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit had upheld a Chicago ordinance banning the possession of handguns, as well as other gun regulations affecting rifles and shotguns. The oral arguments for this case had taken place in the Supreme Court and had reversed the 7th Circuit decision holding that the Second Amendment was incorporated under the 14th Amendment, thus protecting those rights from infringement by local governments. The case was then remanded back to the 7th Circuit to resolve conflicts between certain Chicago gun restrictions and the Second Amendment. So this case was a very big reason in why you can now own handguns no matter what state you live in, no matter what city you live in, and it all started with McDonald wanting to defend himself a little better and keep a handgun.